Ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us as the November 20th, 2014 special voting meeting of the East Fishkill Town Board. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilperson Cassidy?
Present.
Councilperson D'Alessandro?
Present.
Councilperson Marinaro?
Present.
Councilperson Franco?
Present.
Supervisor Hickman?
Present. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do I have a motion to open this special voting meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Special voting meeting now open. Before we start the special voting meeting, public comments, I would just like to explain a little bit about, obviously everybody here in the audience knows about the Joe's Mother Road project that was proposed. We denied the application, I believe it was October 30th, and that was that night. Soon after that, we got the notices of claim. The lawsuits were filed in the White Plains Court Wednesday. Several lawsuits were brought against the town of East Fishkill. So just that being said, our attorney has looked into the matter and he's been looking into alternatives. So Tom, if you'd just like to let us know what you found.
I'll try to be as complete as possible and as brief as possible, which is hard to do. But as the supervisor said, on October 30th, the board unanimously turned down the special permit for Joe's Mother's Road. A few days after, we received the filings of 3 notices of claim from the applicant, the property owner, and Abilities First, claiming many different violations of federal law and issues. Also, on Tuesday of this week, an Article 78 proceeding was filed. What an Article 78 proceeding is, it's a petition asking a justice of Supreme Court to review the action of the town board and to determine whether the action should be upheld or reversed by the court. So that was filed. There are multiple exhibits, including much of the material that was disseminated against the project, etc. So if the Article 78 proceeding were successful, it would result in the development going forward at Joe's Mother's Road. If it's not successful on their part, then the town board's decision would be upheld and it would not go forward there. So between the vote on the 30th and this afternoon, a few hours ago, one of the themes of all the public hearings was that it was a great project, wrong site. And some speakers indicated perhaps some of the property across the street might be a viable alternate location. So in discussing that with the attorney for the parties, a concept came up that if they would agree to freeze the lawsuits at this point in time, take a period of time between now and June 1st of next year. Let's see if we can go through the complete public process, SEQA reviews, public hearings, comments, all the school impacts, everything that you would normally do, and see if development could be placed across the street. So that part of it works for part of the lawsuit for them to agree to. The other part was the property owner and Abilities First, they want us to look at our zoning ordinance. We already have a special permit that allows alternate housing, I think they call it. It's really something that we should modernize and clean up. And the thought was to have a special permit that would be applicable on property within the town. And yes, it could possibly be at Joe's Mother's Road, but there's no guarantees, there's no plan for that. But it would be for assisted living and memory care. It would be for elderly people. We would define assisted living. It would be subject to a public hearing. We go through the SEQA review, public hearings, a legislative hearing by the town board. And if we came up with a concept for assisted living and put that into our ordinance, that combined with the approval of development across the street would end all the litigation, give the town a general release for all of the notices of claim, and end the Article 78 proceeding. So the action the town board has before it this evening is not to go ahead and approve a project across the street or, anything like that. It's simply to agree to use a good faith effort between now and June 1st to attempt to accomplish those two things. If they are accomplished, the lawsuits are over. If they aren't, then the lawsuits continue. So it's not locking the board in or the community in. It's giving us a tolling. Now, it does give us a good faith standard that we have to, we can't, sit back and take 6 months and hope we blow the June 1st date. So we do have to, in good faith, do the process, hold the public hearings, get the input, and pursue it in good faith. So that's the standard we would have to do. Additionally, so if the town board agreed to that, we've also discussed and have worked out a potential contract of sale for 22 of the 140 some odd acres across the street. It would be primarily across from the it runs across this whole land, but across from the firehouse. It would be a shared entrance. The price, if it were all approved afterwards, it would be $1,496,000. Which is approximately $17,000 a unit without approvals. We've spoken with the town's consulting appraiser, so that's in it. There would be buy-in fees for water, sewer, and recreation. The number of units for Ability First residents would be increased from the 17 to 25, which ironically, under the way the fair housing law is, that's the biggest number that can be actually reserved solely for that population. Doesn't mean that Abilities First could not perhaps have 30 of the units, but they can only specifically hold aside 25 under the fair housing laws. So, and it's all subject, all of that is subject, once again, I can't be stronger on that, a traffic study. All the site reviews, DEC with the wetlands, the Army Corps with the floodplain, DOT with the entrance on all of the agencies that anyone else would have to go through. So it's not, being approved tonight, or it's all conditioned on all of that. And in fact, it would be illegal for the town not to go through the secret process on all of its actions. So I think I've touched on most of the concerns. I don't know if...
And if I may, one thing I would like to, two things I'd like to touch upon. I think that when we left the last meeting, everybody said it goes across the street. I think everybody in the audience felt it was a better place for the project, and they would support it. So I'm hopeful that the public still stands by that. As far as lawsuits, I'd like to say one other thing, though. When you look at the lawsuits are all predicated basically, typically if the town board makes a decision, the planning board or zoning board makes a decision, and the applicant doesn't agree, makes an Article 78 against the board to overturn it on certain grounds. But this lawsuit goes much further than that, because it talks about exclusionary zoning, not supplying living space for ADA, and a lot of things which really make this a much more significant lawsuit than a simple Article 78. Now, if we lost the Article 78, the judge would say, okay, it goes back over to Joe's Mother's Road, and we do think this would be a better place about it. Now, the other thing I think that a lot of people here are probably concerned about is the request from Mr. Segretti to have the change to zoning to allow alternative care housing or assisted living, as we call it. Our town code has allowed, since 1985, alternate care housing. So it's in a residential zone, so it's not unheard of. In his area, he does have access to sewer and water, and he does have frontage there on 52. So in his position, I could understand him requesting that. But again, that's just a request for change in zoning. That doesn't mean we're going to approve it. That doesn't even mean he's going to make an application. It just allows him to go through the process. He would be going through the same process as they did with the other project, with the Mr. Kearney's project, and have to go through all the same things. And then he'd have to do traffic studies there because it's a different use. So all the traffic studies would be new. And I can't speak for it, but as the attorney says, if you change to our zoning, that would allow it in certain areas in the town, in residential areas, which it already does. And we'd be more specific, and we would craft the law because we don't want our people to feel, concerned about it. So we'll be working on this law right
And
on
there'll be
through.
public hearings.
Exactly. We'll be having a public hearing on it. So I don't want anybody to be concerned that they're not going to be heard on that. So, but basically, that's where we stand tonight. These lawsuits, like I say, they encompass much more than a simple Article 78. These are significant. We're here tonight because the main, I'd call him the main plaintiff, it has indicated with his time schedule that he needs to stay in his his cycle of funding. He has also indicated that he will walk away from this deal and he has no problem to litigate it. So we need to make a decision tonight whether we'll enter into the stipulation, which I think, well, I won't say what I think, but the lawsuits, again, are significant, and this is going to possibly provide for this project to be moved across the street and a change in the zoning to allow alternative or assisted living in residential zones. And that we will craft the law again, so that's something we'll be looking at. So, is that okay?
That's a good point, Supervisor, is the fact that the only reason of the pressure is that if this agreement is submitted to the state, then they'll leave him in his cycle of funding. If he was out of that cycle of funding, he doesn't have the incentive to try to work with us to see if it could be resolved. So he says.
So that's where we are tonight. So with that, I would ask anybody in the audience to like to speak on any agenda items.
Can I ask, Tom, do you mind giving us a brief description of assisted living so the community knows?
Okay, the concept for assisted living is it's usually a step below a nursing home facility. It would be for senior citizens. They are regulated by the New York State Department of State. They have to be a licensed facility. And it's normally akin to having central meals and social facilities for the residents of it. The residents have to be able to dress themselves, get up, take care of themselves primarily. They usually have room service, I'll call it, like maid service for them. And most of the facilities these days do usually have a certain number of rooms for memory care for those of our population that are suffering with Alzheimer's and memory loss. So that's the definition. We won't be reinventing it. We'll look at other towns and villages that have it. There's the Osborne down in Mamaroneck or Harrison, which is a well-respected one that has a definition of it. There's the Springvale Inn in Croton that has both the assisted living and then across the street is the nursing home. So it's in fact, it's senior apartments, the assisted living and nursing home. It's a complete compendium of residences.
Thank you.
Just very quickly to
Yes,
stay
sir.
on point, just a quick question about that. Assisted living, would there be an age on that, or is it?
Yeah, it would be 55 or 62. We have it at 55, but if we can make it 62 and have it pass muster, it would be that, yes.
Yeah, yes.
I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I'm really talking about the building itself. Is there a code in our, when we build these buildings, can we go up 6 stories, 2 stories?
No, it would be limited to no more than 36 feet. Right now, I think it's 35, 36 feet.
Good evening, folks. So it was 68 units originally on 7 acres?
Right.
So you'd be increasing that by almost 3, like 20 acres?
We have 20 acres.
20
Okay.
acres and a maximum of no more than 4 units an acre.
We dropped the number of units per acre.
Okay, so you would be putting 68 units plus another 8 of the assisted living?
Right. He's looking for 88 units.
Yeah.
But that's obviously subject to all the reviews. But the
Okay.
density can't exceed 4 units an acre, which would be 88.
So they'll actually have more room for green space and stuff like that. It'll be
Yes.
done right.
It'd be a little
Yes.
better.
And part of the concept would be, the town always wanted to open up that properties, have the village green and maybe access to it. Part of it is that the road would be cut in at this time at his expense while he's doing some of the site work. And whatever area is not disturbed by building, we'll have a conservation easement taken back over it, which will continue to public access very readily into all the other site.
Hey, so take the $1.4 million that you get for that. Take $750, give Singretti whatever, I'm sorry, I forget his name, the property owner.
Okay.
Buy his property, right?
Yeah.
And turn it into a park.
turn it into a park.
Everyone said that that would be a great spot to park because that lot there represents what this town is, like that picture behind you. It's got the little house, it's
Yeah.
already open, you don't have to cut trees down. You could put parking there, nothing
Yep.
crazy,
Yep.
right?
Only problem is we still owe $1.35 million on the property across the street.
This one over here.
Yeah.
Right.
So we still got to pay that off. Good idea, though. Sure. Anybody else in the audience like to speak?
Just as far as Joe's Mother's Road is concerned on the assisted living, is that, that's just a proposal by us to say that, listen, if you guys stave off your lawsuits, we're willing to work over here, and we're willing to work across the street. That's the premise of what we're
Well,
trying to
the
accomplish?
premise is that right now our zoning, we've had over the past 4 or 5 years, we've had various people come in. One was looking on Route 52. I'm not going to name properties.
Of course.
But one on 52, one came in and asked about across street. One was on 82 down on the other side about an assisted living facility. And our ordinance is, as the supervisor, is very antiquated. There's a provision in there that actually has allowed adult residences. There's one on 52, one on Carpenter Road. Usually it's 10, 12 people, but it has a density of up to like 6 units an acre. So the thought, in this concept would be that we would put a provision in our code that's not just going, it doesn't automatically attach to that property.
Correct.
It would be a special
But Mr.
permit.
Segretti is motivated by this? This is something
I guess
that-
he may think that he could find somebody. As far as we know, he has nobody, ready to make a proposal on it.
But this was amicable to staving off that
It-
Article 78.
It would be to get rid of the Article 78 and the notices of claim. That would do it.
Okay.
I don't know if I didn't hear this, but how many units in the assisted living? How many?
That's going to be based on the square footage that might be allowable of the structure, and the state has regulations as the minimum size. We have to get into all of that with respect to dimensional things.
Okay, so there's no,
Well, the state limits, but there's no application. So he'd have to come forward if he...
We're going to
did
look at
make
what
an
the state has as the minimum limits and the bulk area of the site, because you can only have a lot coverage of like 65%, but that includes parking and everything else, and you whittle it down.
that's good. By the time you get it ready, I'll be old enough to move in there. I think I heard you say, John, they have water and sewer?
It's
On Joe's Mother's
accessible.
Road, it's
It's
accessible.
accessible, yes.
And who's going to pay for that?
Oh,
They
they
would.
would, they would.
Anyone who
So
would- yeah.
Segretti's going to pay for to get the water to...
Yes, we wouldn't have anything to do with that.
All right, and if you said that, I think you said that our zoning would already allow for this in,
What do they call ACH, Assisted Care Housing,
The
1985.
definition, if you read the definition is a little scary. It doesn't provide for the elderly.
It should,
So-
but actually, that regulation should
Yeah.
be updated to
Yeah.
newer standards, too.
so the zoning would have to be changed again. But I
It's
thought-
already in our zone.
That's in our zone.
That's
allowed.
in
So
our
we're not
It's
going to
already
change the
allowed.
zoning again?
We're gonna change the zoning just to allow, if you would.
What we're going to do is we're going to take, that's a special permit that already exists, and we're going to clean that up, rework it to have it fit into the modern standards that would be applicable within the Hopewell Hamlet area.
Okay, so it's not considered spot zoning then?
No, we're not rezoning. That's going to stay
Okay,
residential.
that
Yeah,
was all
yeah, yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ed Sloshower, good evening, everyone. You answered half of my questions in your opening statement, Tom, and I thank you for that. Just an observation, just based on prior meetings that I attended, and obviously everyone here attended as well. Workforce affordable housing for the residents of the town of East Fishkill, or is it workforce affordable housing project located in the town of East Fishkill? So what I'd like to ask possibly, Tom, if you could clarify town code, okay,
Well,
pertaining to that. He wants to build the project, and I've brought this up in several other community members as well. We're looking for workforce affordable housing, and even the supervisor mentioned this, for the people of our community, firemen, policemen, teachers, young kids starting out that really can't afford a lot, and want to move out of their parents' houses in the basements and want to start a life of their own. So my question is there anything specific in town code or federal law that a project like this has to be open to the public, as Mr. Carney is doing with a lottery? Or is there a restriction, or is there anything where it's required, if he builds this type of project in the town, how do the residents take advantage of this project if we're allowing this project to be built? So just some clarification of the legality of it.
Sure, we'll give you.
But excuse me, Tom, before we
Yeah.
go, if we may, I would just say, we're looking at how these things are put out to, to notify the residents. But let me just ask, Tom, in the lawsuits, isn't the term exclusionary zoning used quite a
Well,
bit? So I don't know if you can you be that
Well,
specific?
I think we have to we have already an affordable housing provision in our code.
Correct.
Which only pertains to large residential developments. And in that case, the developers, at their own cost and expense, have to reduce the price of a certain percentage of the units to bring them down to the affordable standards of the county, and they're for sale. In that case, you can't discriminate on race, creed, or color, but you can give a preference because it's all private funds and do that. That's one part of the code that's allowable.
Okay.
When you move on, what the supervisor refers to as exclusionary zoning, any zoning ordinance of any town has to have a variety of housing options to meet all parts of the economic spectrum. So the working all the way up to 100-acre lots. And if you don't have a full variety of that, then you're excluding a segment of the population, and that's when you get into a problematic area. So the workforce housing, you can't reserve it solely for the residents of East Fishkill, but the town will, of course, keep the information as to when it's going to start accepting applications, etc., very well known to the people. And when the applications come in, it would be, behoove residents to get their applications in. And obviously, in my experience in another municipality, 92 units, everyone had the same fears. It was less than 10 of the units were from people outside of the geographical regional area.
You just answered my next question, because
most of the draw, because people who live, 15 miles away aren't going to want to pull up routes to come here.
Right, and I think you just clarified my next question with regards to the lottery, how it's run. Is it going to be a town website, download an application? Right. How is it being advertised?
All of that will be.
What would be part of his strategy?
Correct. It would be. He can't come out and say that, I'm only going to take all the East Fishkill applications first.
Right.
But if we do our homework as a community, I've been involved in them before, where as soon as the applications are released, you have everybody. You even run. There are people who come in and talk to people about how to fill out the application, the information you need to make it complete, everything, and you get that information to your residents. So when their applications come in and reviewed, if they're complete, et cetera, they move on to the next step, as opposed to someone who doesn't have that.
Right. I mean, I wasn't bringing this up for an exclusionary. I mean, the whole point, as I had said in other meetings, my community, I mean, it's a great idea, a great concept. I want there to make sure, because again, there was misinformation, disinformation, whatever, at the prior meetings, that the residents are going to have an opportunity,
Absolutely.
to take advantage of this, because the idea of having it here and amending our laws and following the rules and the guidelines is to better our own community. That's first and foremost.
And also, I neglected to say that exclusionary housing, one of the key things is the 3 counties, Dutchess, Ulster, and I forget if it was Columbia, or they do every 8 or 9 years a regional housing needs assessment on a regional basis, which is what the law requires. And they look at the needs, and they do an allocation of those needs. East Fishkill's allocation under the last study is about 192 units. Yep. So if you want to protect your community from other challenges to your zoning, you have to show that you're doing something to try to meet that before they do the next study and shows that it's 300 units. So,
And if I may, excuse me 1 second, Ed, just so that you know, we have to make housing for everybody. We like to see that the residents of East Fishkill get served, obviously, but we need to make housing for everybody. And we will do our best to serve, the residents also.
I just think some again, not misinformation, just, when Mr. Carney's explaining this, he's giving a general broad example of how his lottery is running. And I think, not clearly explaining the process, there becomes speculation where, he gave an example, well, I built 80 units and I got 500 applications. Now, whether that was true or not, I don't know, but...
No, we would like to see the East Fishkill residents, but it's for
Absolutely,
everybody.
absolutely. Look, I said moving this across the street, great project, bad location. I'm glad that you're able to have a conversation, negotiate. I think, it's a positive for the community. Again, my only other concern at this point is just if the residents get a fair opportunity, to take advantage of this.
That's all we can ask.
That's all we can ask. Let's make sure when the time comes for that, it's done the right way. It'll better our community. I think it'll, as I said, a project like this would be a model, for other counties and for Mr. Carney to say, look what I did in the town of East Fishkill. So, hopefully this will be a positive. We move this along. We work out whatever minor things. We discuss it in public, which obviously we will. I think most of the community will support this. I'm sure there may be a couple of issues here or there with some people, but hopefully, we could work everything out, and this will be a positive moving forward for everybody. So I thank you for a few minutes of your time.
Ed, I just want to add one other comment, if I can. The other thing that it's to keep in mind why certain things can be done for certain people in our community is because we also dealing with the federal government. And when you use federal dollars, you cannot use it for a certain purpose to benefit just a certain part of your community. So this is federal dollars used for specific reasons, and so you have to apply to those federal rules and regulations which override our town laws. Unfortunately, we have to abide by those rules.
Well, absolutely, and I had brought up
So the point I wanted to make and clarify for the whole community that let's keep the federal government away from our community as much as possible.
I agree. And that's the other thing I had mentioned when...
That's a lesson learned.
Right. When I had said, there's other types of funding out there, neighborhood banks and different things. Obviously, Mr. Carney has a model. He wishes to follow it, and we have to make a decision to go along with that. And that's understandable, and that's fine. And I agree with you. So, as I said, I think we're moving in a positive direction, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Going back to Jill's question, you were saying that there is water and sewer. I thought that's why Carney couldn't go forward, because there wasn't
Well, he didn't
water.
have an agreement with us.
Okay.
As part of the resolution of denial, we had no contracts or agreements ever. We had some discussions. He made an application without actually having a contract with us to supply water and sewer.
So it would be town water and sewer?
Yes. Well, or it could be the county, too. There's a county water line down there, too, so you could also happen to the county line.
Okay. And then you mentioned about 3 counties doing a study on the affordable housing.
There were regional studies, and they grouped the counties together. I know it was Ulster and Dutchess, and I'm not sure what the third one was,
So
but that's available.
we really don't know if we really need it in our town.
Yeah,
But
we-
we've been allocated
We've
a
been
certain
allocated,
number,
yeah.
because
From the
this whole
regional.
big group needs it.
Right, from the region.
So is there really a need, and are we going to be able to fill 63 units of affordable housing? Or are we going to have people coming from all around because we have the allocation, and here we are?
No, that's a good question, but unfortunately, and I believe they've identified a shortage in our town.
In East Fishkill also.
Yeah, this is the 3-county
But we
study in
have.
2009.
We have so much affordable housing, but none of the existing counts.
Yeah.
We have to have a project
Well,
in order to
But I
have.
think it is, sir, if I may, the town has grown up. We're a big town, 50 square miles, and we've always had farms, and we've had the little hamlets, but we've never really allowed, like Hopewell Garden Apartment, we don't allow apartment buildings, attached apartments, and that type of housing. And I believe that's where that type of housing needs lies, is with that. It's not really.
That kind of
Yes,
apartment house.
yeah.
Because there's so many older homes that are for rent, and I see a lot of them empty.
Yes, I know, I
And
know.
they're affordable housing.
Yeah. No, that's true. It's, but this is something that the federal government is very insistent
Mandated,
upon.
so we may
and-
not need it, but they tell us we need it.
Yes, yes, and we will have to comply with the federal government, with federal law.
No, that's wrong.
Well,
And I tell you what, that will have to happen. We'll have to be in compliance with the federal
Yeah.
laws, so.
And also, there are a lot of seniors who indicate, oh, senior, this is open to the seniors. It's
Yeah.
not,
But
you know,
we
they're
could
not
have the
excluded
other
from it.
senior project. If Tony Segretti gets his senior, that would,
Well, but
Well,
that's only
that's
for-
assisted living.
assisted,
That's,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
now, how many acres are across the street that are usable? Because I understand there's a lot of wetland.
45 right here, and I think there, if you come in from the back of Bow Road, there's another section down, but it's so hard to get to. But 45 acres right in this
So
section. here.
that Carney would be getting like half of it.
You get half of it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the audience, anybody else in the audience like to speak? Any questions? Okay. With that, there being none, do I have a motion to, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't a public hearing, this is comments on agenda items. The first resolution to consider is taking action with respect to several claims, lawsuits filed against the town, and this is actually a two-part resolution. The first will authorize the stipulation of settlement as discussed, and authorizing the sale of 22 acres to Kearney Realty and Development. Do I have a motion to consider taking action with respect to the claims and lawsuits filed against the town?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. The second item on the agenda is authorized informational filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and basically it's just a filing that needs town board approval to file our reports. So I'll read the resolution, because we hadn't discussed that one as much as we discussed the others. Whereas the town is required to comply with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission rules with respect to continuing disclosure to investors, and certain reports and filings are due by December 1st, 2014, now therefore be it resolved that the supervisor be and hereby is authorized to sign on behalf of the town all documents required by the SEC under the requirements of its municipal continuing disclosure cooperative. Do I have a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign these disclosure documents?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. And that's it. Do I have a motion to close this special voting meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Special voting meeting is now closed. I thank the public, and we look forward to working with everybody going forward with our projects. So thank you very much for coming, and happy Thanksgiving.